What's up, everyone? So this will be the next video after the exhaust video, and unfortunately I was fixing the exhaust, and I don't know if I went over in the last video, but there was a pretty good ticking sound coming from it. I thought maybe we had a collapsed lifter or something. It ended up being where the manifold and the exhaust met. Got that all squared away, and I was up here listening close to the intake manifold, and it sounded like I was hearing I don't know how to explain it, more or less a rubbing sound, but it was in correlation to how the motor would turn over. So I know there's a lot of metal in this, so I wanted to go ahead and drain the oil and see what it was looking like. I expected to have a little bit of shavings, but whenever I drained the oil, it was a lot more than expected. I'll get you guys a little clip here of metallic. So unfortunately, it's back in the garage, and we're going to tear it all the way back down again, and this time we're going to pull the engine. We're going to put new rod, main bearings in it, basically do a whole complete rebuild on it. So this series continues, but this time it ain't just a cam swap, it's going to be a full-on engine rebuild. So we're not going to go as in detail with this one. This one's pretty much going to be a quick video. Keep it about 15 minutes or so, that's my goal, but it's going to be tear it down, get everything disassembled, get it back, clean everything up, plastic gauge over all the bearing clearances, and then get it thrown back together so we can actually move on to the next step with this build. So, set you guys up. I'm going to get underneath of it and start taking out the torque converter bolts and the bottom bell housing bolts, and then drop it back down, and then we should be done with everything from underneath. And then I'm going to start tearing down the top end. We're going to take everything off of it, take the heads down, or take the block down, the bear, and then pull the engine that way, because I don't know if it'll come out without removing the headers, and removing the headers seems like an absolute nightmare, and I'd probably rather just remove the heads. So here we go. Alright, so looking from underneath the car, it don't look like it's going to be that bad. So looks like a 8 mil there. It may or may not need to come out, but I'm going to pull it out. I think them are all 15s. All you have to do is pull out the bottom half, so probably up to that stud, and all the way around to the other side, and then pull the starter off, which looks fairly simple. Disconnect the battery before you do all that, and then you got a plate here, an inspection plate. Looks like a 10 millimeter. Pull that off, and then you have to spin the engine over and get all the torque converter bolts. We went ahead and took the starter off. My plan was to stick a screwdriver through the starter hole, which is right there, and spin the flywheel that way. Well, can't do that. So the inspection plate's off. You can see one bolt right there. It's a 13 millimeter. But we need to get on this crank. We can't get on this crank with all this stuff in the way, so I'm go ahead and take the bumper back off of here. You guys remember it's a 10 mil each side, right behind here. You get all these clips to remove, and then it pretty much just pops off there, and then you got all the 7 millimeters. Alright, what's up, everyone? We got the coolant draining out. I gotta go to a doctor's appointment real quick, so we're gonna let that drain out until I get back, and then we'll get the radiator pulled out of there, be able to get something on the crank pulley, get the spin it around, we'll get our torque converter bolts out, and then we should be able to move. We'll drop the car back down, and all we have to do is all the stuff up here now, and then we'll be good to pull the engine here soon. Alright, so we got everything out down here. You got belt housing bolt. You got a 10 mil that's there in that threaded hole. Right above it, you got a stud. You got a bolt, and then there's your starter bolts, them 3. And then you got another threaded hole right there. You can barely see it. And then you got a hole above it, way up there where that bracket is. Right there. There's that bracket. It's a stud. And then you got a large negative cable and then a small black cable that goes up there. And then get all your converter bolts out. There's
You can see them. They're doubled up. So there's two. You have to turn it over 3 times to get all of them. So there's 6 bolts altogether. And then right there above that starter, there's a hole for a 16mm head bolt. Same on this side. And then that should hopefully be everything from underneath. This steering shaft, we may end up removing too. There's a bolt right there. You can see the head of it. We'll probably take it off and pop it off just so it don't interfere with the header coming up out of here. But we'll save that, wait till later. All right, so just a little tip here before you, well, you can see I got this top hose off. Got our bucket there, got everything else sealed up on the water. Take your thermostat out, shove a rag in there, get you a blowgun, like so. Shove that in there and pressurize the system, and then it'll, my plan is it'll help get all the coolant within, around the piston and all that stuff, around the sleeves of the piston out, so we don't make as big of a mess when we pull these heads off, and we get the most coolant out and saved. So we got this one little cord here, those back coolant lines. I may end up taking that alternator off just so it don't interfere with the ABS. And then the top bell housing bolts, and we might try to hook this thing up and get it up out of here. All right, another update here. We really don't remember what you guys seen last. I think it was the alternator. Took the alternator off, and then we got that plug that goes right there. So that one's rough with the alternator on, the one right behind this timing cover. I removed the bolts out of this so it can be pushed out of the way. What I wanted to do was unbolt the motor mounts. I don't know if you guys can see through there. I wanted to unbolt the big aluminum bracket, which is right here, off the motor, because it's wedged in there like on this side it's wedged like this and like this. So if you remove the bolts out of the engine, it'll pull straight up out of there and you don't have all that mass. But the problem is there's studs that run through the aluminum block, and it blocks you from getting the bolts out of the motor. So what I think we're going to have to do is remove those bolts, one on each side. They're 15mm. So I'm going to take those out, and once them are out, it's ready to be picked up. So we're going to take those out, get the hoist all set up here, and then hopefully it'll come out easy peasy. Alright, so this is where we're at. It's all hooked up. We got the motor mounts out of the ones that's going down, the two, and one in the back, one in the front. All the bell housing bolts are out. We got the chain crossed between the knock sensor threads. We took a 10mm out of the head, put them back there, wrapped around that twice, and then that to hold the chain in place. So that shouldn't really have no weight because it should all be where it's wrapped around. And then got a bolt in there, and just ran across, and that hooked right in the middle of it. The engine stand is not liking the weight of the Hemi.
That's great news. All right, no marks on the cam. Sweet. So that means most of the metal that was in here still is probably left over from the lifter failure. Nice. See, most of them look like that. That's why we're going to do this and just put all new bearings in. Like that one ain't awful, but you can see the marks on where some of that metal contamination has gotten into it and squirted up. Ain't nothing you can feel with the fingernail or nothing like that, but alright, so that's everything tore down now. One thing that's left is the sensors. You know, take the bolts out, spin them. Try not to break any. Whatever you break, you'll have to replace, which they can get expensive quick. All these bearings look good. Number 2 is the one that had the pretty 8-up bearing on the cap. So, but all the journals on everything looks good. All these journals are good. All the journals for the rods are all good, so we'll be able to go back with just standard size. So we'll get a bunch of bearings ordered here, and where they come in, we'll set them on here, torque a couple down, plastic gauge them, make sure we're all within tolerance, and then throw it back together. All right. Well, hopefully you guys can see all right. So we put our plastic gauge on there. Let me throw that away before that makes a mess. They're underneath our caps, which are installed, as you can see. I just loosened everything up, so all I'm doing now is looking for my socket that I laid down somewhere. Oh my goodness. Oh, there it is. Is that it? All right. There's our mark. Right there. Hopefully this camera's set up right and you guys can see alright, but so let's say we got about 3 thou on that one. So now we've got everything disassembled. We cleaned the plastic gauge off all the bearing surfaces. Now it's time to assemble the crank and everything. The bearing clearances came out to about 3 thou on all of them, so it's all good to go. Make sure your bearings are all seated good. Then we're just going to take this and apply a good bit of it. The arrows on these go towards the front. This is where we're at. Cranks all the way in. We got all the side bolts down the side, which are torqued them to 15 foot-pounds and 21. All of them are done, along with the main caps are all fully installed. This is my parts cleaner setup. That's just diesel fuel Then we got all the old rings cleaned off. Pistons are sitting over here. We can't do nothing really with them yet because I mean, I can go and put the rings on it, but I don't have a piston installer. I'm gonna have my dad bring one from his work tomorrow. And then we'll get all them slipped in here and slip them all through loosely, screw them on the crank, get them all installed, and then we'll take one off at a time and plastic gauge it and make sure they're all within spec. The piston rings, I already measured the gap. They're 18 thousandths. So we'll be good to go for tomorrow to throw this the rest of the way together, and hopefully tomorrow we'll have a complete engine. And then I would say I like to throw this back in there, but since I'm doing all this work, I'm going to make sure whenever I put it back together this time, it's not, we don't have to tinker with anything. It's all said, done. The only thing we have to do from here on out is tune it. So I think what I'm also going to do is I'm debating on cutting off the flanges off these headers and either putting a V-band clamp or cutting them off and just making it a slip fit, because I don't like the way that's made. I fought with it trying to get them to seal up. So that's probably, we'll definitely cut them off. I just don't know what I'm going to do yet. Probably, I'd like to make them a slip fit, but yeah, so tomorrow I'll bring you guys back and we'll start installing the pistons and getting all that stuff done. What's up, everyone? So we are getting the pistons installed. As you can see, I already got the majority of them all in there. I think I showed you guys the cross hatching on these already, but we used Dingberry. I'm going to show you guys how I do it. So pretty much put all new rings and stuff on these. Make sure they're oriented 180 apart. And then remember that, you get this side's 180. You can see the gap there. There's the second ring gap, and then you usually flip it to the 90. There should be one right there, which I got to straighten these up before I install them, and then the other one should be over here somewhere. So that's how I do them. Grease up your bearings real good before you install them. I'm just using some assembly loom I got from my dad at his work. But I'm going to show you guys pretty much how to do this. Before you slide your pistons in, put another coat of oil on there. Alright, so on these pistons, hopefully you guys can see it, there's an arrow pointing to the front. The front will be down here, so we're going to make sure that arrow is oriented where it's pointing towards the front. There's also an E here, and if you can't, some of the pistons you can't see that arrow. This E, the lines coming off the E, they also point towards the front, so in case you can't see the arrow. Spin my crankshaft around. So the rod bearings all the way at the bottom, so we don't risk nicking it. Go to the journal. Like that. Make sure you see these marks on the bearing, so it makes it not slide, so it can't spin. They both go against each other, so the one on the rod itself will be up. This one here will go up, just like this. Just throw it on there. All we're going to do is check clearances. So on this one we're 0.002. Alright, so the next thing we're going to get installed is going to be our camshaft again. Make sure this is lubed up really good. Especially the journals. Lobes at which it rides. Alright, so I'm not sure if you guys remember or not, but we'll go over the timing again real quick. You want top dead center on number 1. Bolt back out. So again, you got the little dowel. That's where the dowel goes. Spin it up, and as you can see, we still got it marked. It's right there at 12 o'clock where that dowel is. So spin that up to 12. Point it to the top bolt hole. Before you put this on, take your chain, 2 black links will go around that mark. So, as you can see there, around it, take your crank gear. It's marked 2. There's a little dot on it, just right there. I put white paint marker. It will go right on that black link. Just like so. Back in there. Your guide will go here. Your tension will go on this side, I think. I'll bring you guys back. Alright, so we're back. We got that Loctited up. Loctite on these bolts. Tensioner will go right here. So as you can see, we got a lot of slack over here, so all you do is take yours, spin it, so you can get this on there. It. Alright, so this is 90 foot-pounds. I think for all the Hemis. On these Eagle Hemis, these bolts are 106. On the pre-Eagle, they're 21 foot-pounds. So, as you guys can see, got the old pump put on. The only thing different that I did this time around was I did put a little bit of anaerobic sealant on this side where the oil was being pushed through the engine, just to prevent a leak there. And then get the pickup tube cleaned and then get it on and get the oil pan put back on it. And after that, we can get the front cover thrown on it and we'll get pretty close. This is where we're at now. We got both heads put on, the lifters are in. The lifter hold down bolts and the 8 mils, they're 106 inch-pound. We're gonna stick our push rods back in here, and remember the longer push rods go on the bottom, which would be your exhaust valve, and then shorter ones up top for the intake. Got the front cover put back on it. We'll get all the valve assembly put on it, put the valve covers back on it, so the top end's done. And then I have some header wrap. We're going to wrap these this time because I noticed a huge difference whenever it was running and just reaching down around all that. So I'm going to wrap them up. And then, if you didn't tell, we also changed up the
exhaust connector because the other ones didn't seal and I couldn't find the right flange for them, so I just cut those off and put V-bands on them, and then we'll put V-bands on the exhaust down there. That should seal up pretty nice. So that's where we're at. We're gonna get these push rods and the rocker arm assemblies put back on it.
So I'll get the bottom end buttoned up all the way and then the oil pan through back on it. But with that being said, we're still not ready to set the engine in the car. I need to get the headers wrapped, so that's what we're going to do now.
So now while we got this all flipped up like this, I am going to get the rest of the sensors put in the side of the block here. Oil pressure sensor that goes there. NOx sensor I think was right there. Or no, that's a crank sensor there. So we're going to get all these sensors put in, and I'm going to spray a little black paint on this just to clean it up a little bit. Make it look like we actually tore it all the way down. And then same thing, I need to spray a little bit up here, clean this up, spray this down. Alright, so I got a good little update here for everyone. Just been hammering out. We got the motor set back in there now. Bought one of these this time. Made it way easier getting it back in there. We got most of the bell housing bolts put in now. We just need to go through and I'm gonna Loctite all them too and torque all them down. And then the torque converter bolts and get the motor mounts put in. And then from there, we'll probably go ahead and put this front plastic piece that holds the headlights, put it all back in there, if I can remember how that goes. And then we're really not that far away from being done with it. Went ahead and got the new O-ring for the oil pickup tube. What else did we get? We cleaned out the oil pan, got all that cleaned up. My plan was right there where the oil pressure sensor is, to pressurize it with a pump up sprayer, but I couldn't find an end that would seal it up good enough to kind of, I guess, pre-oil it. So I already had the valve covers off, so I wanted to pull the valve covers and just dumped a bunch of oil from up there into all the holes I can see. So hopefully that's good enough, because I don't know how else I'm going to be able to prime the system up. But did all that. I need to get the balancer put back on it too, but just want to give you guys an update, so I'm going to hammer back away with it. Alright, so I've just been hammering away. I haven't been videoing a whole lot, but as you can see, we're a lot farther along than what we were. The engine's put in now, which I think you guys already seen that. But working on getting the belt in now. All the bell housing bolts are in, all the torque converter, everything's buttoned up from underneath of it. We're actually to the point where if I had oil, I can go ahead and fire it up and check everything out. But the only thing we need to do now is put the belt on and get all that stuff there put back on it, which is this front plastic piece and the lower valence and the hood. We got to put the cooling fans back on, but like I said, we're to the point where if we had oil, we could have fired it up, but I'll go up in the morning and get all that done. So I'll bring you guys back tomorrow on a fresh day, and we'll jump back into it and hopefully have it all buttoned back up by tomorrow. Alright guys, so motor's buttoned up, oil's in it. We're going to go ahead and test fire it while it's all still apart, so God forbid something has to come back apart. We don't have to tear everything back down again. So we're going to test fire it, make sure it starts up, and then finish put it back together. Alright guys, so as you can tell, the car's pulled back out, and that's going to be the end of this series. Appreciate you guys watching. Like, subscribe. Hopefully we'll have more projects, better videos, better audio coming if this continues to grow the way it is. This car will now be moved on to, well, going back to the tuning stage. So we'll restart on that, and I'll make new videos on that. See what else we got. Once this is done, I thought I was going to hang on to this car for a while, but I think I'm going to go ahead and tuning done, get it ready for the next buyer, make sure it's all squared away, and do the break-in period. Probably run it for 500 miles to 1,000, and do the first oil change, check all the oil out, make sure everything is still clean and clear, and then probably end up selling this car and buying something else. So stick around for the next series on the next car too. But we're still probably talking a couple months away, so I'm sure a couple more videos will be released on this car. But pulled out under its own power, so that's what we wanted. Again, thank you guys for watching. Subscribe, leave a comment down below what I can do to improve, what you would like to see, or maybe even the next car purchase or something. I'm not really against anything. Just kind of looking at trying to get into a Cummins for cheap, maybe do an engine rebuild or something on one of those. I like the 350Zs, maybe do something like that, maybe do a little import, I don't know yet, but that's it. Thanks for watching.